I inherited $6.5 million from my grandparents. My entire family demanded it, threatened me when I refused, and kicked me out. They thought I'd fold. What happened when they came back to take more was something they'll never forget. Hey Reddit, my folks always thought money made them smarter than everyone else. Joke's on them, because when my grandparents passed, they left everything to me. That didn't sit well with the rest of the family. Before I tell you how ugly it got, let me start at the beginning. My name's Nate. I'm 27 and I work as a mechanic at a small shop just outside town. Been there since I was 19. I fix trucks, tractors, the occasional car that's too far gone for the dealership. It's not glamorous, but it pays steady, and I like seeing machines run right after being busted up. The funeral for my grandparents was the week before. I didn't talk much at it, kept my head down, carried a couple chairs, shook hands with neighbors who came by. Afterward, I went back to the shop, changed brake pads, rotated tires, tried not to think too hard. That's how I deal with stuff. Keep working until my head quiets down. My grandparents were basically my parents anyway. They raised me more than my actual mom and dad ever did. My dad, Richard, was always running after the next promotion, gone 60 hours a week, and coming home with that stiff fake smile like he just left a boardroom. My mom, Diane, cared more about who she was having lunch with than what charity party she was going to. They gave me the basics, sure, but it was my grandparents who showed up. Grandpa taught me how to hold a wrench right, how to keep track of expenses in a little notebook, how to stay calm when something breaks. Grandma made sure I knew how to cook a meal and treat people with respect. So when I got the call from Matthew Goldstein, their lawyer, about the will reading, I figured it would be a formality. Maybe I'd get my grandpa's pickup or one of grandma's photo albums. The rest would go to my dad and Aunt Pam, since that's how families usually do it. Matthew's office was downtown, in an old Victorian house converted into law offices. Wood paneling, tall ceilings, smelled faintly like lemon polish. I showed up 10 minutes early because that's just how I am. I don't like walking in late. Everyone else rolled in together like it was a parade. My dad first, checking his phone every few seconds. My mom right behind him, carrying a bag that probably cost more than my car. Jason, my brother, strolling in like he owned the place, wearing sunglasses inside. He's 25 and thinks he's a big deal, but never held a job longer than 3 months. Aunt Pam came in talking too loud about some argument at her country club, with Uncle Steve trailing behind like usual. I sat near the end of the table, trying to keep out of the line of fire. Matthew came in with a stack of folders, adjusted his glasses, and started reading. I don't remember all the legal words, but I do remember the numbers. The estate totaled about $6.5 million. The breakdown went like this. House and property, around $1.2 million. Investments and cash accounts, roughly $3 million. 25% stake in Alexander Logistics, the trucking company my grandparents built, worth just over $2 million. Personal property, like the old pickup, family heirlooms, and some storage contents. And then came the part that made everyone freeze. The entire estate was left to me. Only me. Matthew didn't pause for drama. He just read the words plain. He even listed my dad, mom, Jason, Aunt Pam, and Uncle Steve as specifically excluded. Said they had been provided for during their lifetime, and that was the end of it. The air in that room got heavy. Nobody moved for a second. I honestly thought I'd misheard. $6.5 million. That's not billionaire stuff, but it's not small either. Enough to change the direction of your whole life. And they were trusting me with it. My dad snapped first. He leaned forward, voice sharp. You can't manage this. Sign it to me. Like it was already his and I was holding it for him. My mom jumped in, voice dripping with that practiced sweet tone she used whenever she wanted something. Be reasonable, Nate. This isn't practical. You don't understand how complicated money like this is. Jason slammed his hand down. What about me? I've got plans. This could be startup capital. He looked around like someone would nod along. Jason's plans usually meant half-baked apps and cryptocurrency scams. Aunt Pam didn't say much yet, just glared at me like I stole something. Uncle Steve stayed quiet, as always. I didn't say anything either. I was still processing it. Not just the money, but the fact that my grandparents had put their faith in me instead of their own kids. Matthew didn't rise to their yelling. He stayed calm, stacked the papers neatly, and slid a small envelope across the table toward me. Your grandfather wanted you to have this directly. The envelope was thick cream paper, sealed. Inside was a folded letter and a small brass key with a tag marked Box 217, a safe deposit key. I didn't open the letter there, just tucked it into my jacket pocket. I could feel my dad's eyes on it like he already wanted to snatch it. Matthew gave me his card and said he'd follow up with me about next steps. That was his polite way of ending the circus. Everyone stood up. My dad lingered near me, leaned close enough that only I could hear. We're talking about this tonight. At the house. 6 sharp. His tone made it sound less like an invite and more like an order. I didn't answer. Just nodded once and walked out. The rest of them filed out, voices sharp and annoyed, already plotting. Outside, it was drizzling. The letter and key felt heavier than they should have in my pocket. I stood there a minute before heading to my car. I knew right then this wasn't going to end with just one meeting. I showed up at my parents' house that evening like he told me. 6 sharp. Gackers, I didn't even take off my jacket because I knew how this was going to go. They were all waiting in the formal living room. My dad stood by the fireplace like some kind of judge, arms crossed. My mom perched on the edge of one of those chairs no one ever actually sits in. Jason was sprawled on the couch, laptop open. Aunt Pam was pacing, waving her hands, and Uncle Steve was by the window, looking like he wished he was anywhere else. My dad didn't waste time. "Sit down," he ordered. I sat in the chair closest to the door. "We're not going to dance around this," he said. "The estate isn't yours to keep. It was meant for the family. You sign over control to me and we'll manage it properly. You'll get a share, of course. Something reasonable." "Reasonable?" I asked. 10%, he said. "That's generous considering your limited needs." Jason cut in, pointing at his laptop. "That's more than enough for you, Nate. You don't need millions sitting around while I'm working on something that could make us all rich. 5 million would be enough to get my exchange platform running. Real money, not wasted on fixing old trucks." Aunt Pam stopped pacing long enough to jump in. "And the house should go to us. My kids need better schools. And that neighborhood is perfect. You wouldn't even use the space properly?" I just looked at them. Not one of them mentioned my grandparents' wishes. Not once. My mom leaned forward, clasping her hands together like she was being kind. "Sweetheart, managing wealth is complicated. Your father has the experience. Let him take this burden off you. You could even finally move into a proper place. No more tiny apartment." I said it plain. "I'm not signing anything." The air went cold. My dad's face tightened. "Don't be stupid. You're not equipped for this. Either you sign voluntarily, or we'll make sure you don't have a choice." Jason spun his laptop around. He'd already drafted some half-legal document, transfer of assets, with a blank signature line. "Just sign here. We'll fill the details later." I pushed it back across the table. "No," my dad's voice dropped. "Then you can pack your things. Tonight." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I live in my apartment." My mom smiled like she had been waiting for this line. "Correction. You were living there. That building is held under one of our investment companies. Your lease was only valid as long as we allowed it. Consider it terminated." I blinked at them. "You're kicking me out of my own apartment?" Jason grinned. "Not yours anymore. Locks change in the morning. Maybe tonight if we feel like calling the guy now." "That's an illegal lockout," I said. They just smiled. I took out my phone and recorded the door, the van, and the building signage, then texted Matthew. "They're changing locks tonight." He replied a minute later, "Don't fight it. Document everything. I'll file in the morning." My dad didn't even raise his voice. "We can," and we just did. 30 minutes. Go pack essentials. Whatever you leave behind stays, either charity or trash. Pam folded her arms. "It's better this way. You can move into that big house for now, until we sort things out." It hit me then. They were cutting me off, pushing me into the house so they could circle around and strip it clean. I didn't argue. No point. I drove back to the apartment with my heart hammering but my face calm. Sure enough, a locksmith van was idling outside. My dad must have called him before I even got there. I told the locksmith, "Give me 30 minutes to grab essentials." He shrugged. "Between you and the landlord, man." He handed me a card and leaned on his van. I kept the card in frame and kept filming. Inside, I went straight for the important things. Grabbed my laptop, a duffel bag, documents, work boots, a box with my grandmother's quilt folded inside, a couple photo frames. That was it. No time for the rest. Jason had been smirking, but he wasn't wrong. 30 minutes to pack up your life doesn't go far. I hauled the bags down the stairs, walked right past the locksmith, and tossed everything into the back of my truck. Drove off without looking back. The road out to my grandparents' house felt longer than usual. It was already dark, drizzle tapping the windshield, headlights cutting through. My stomach was in knots. By the time I pulled into their driveway, my hands were sore from gripping the wheel. The porch light was still on, set on the old timer Grandpa always kept. I pulled the brass key out of my pocket, slid it into the lock, and it turned without a hitch. The air inside was quiet and still. I dropped my bags in the hallway and did a quick check. Power still on, heat running low. I walked to the kitchen, flicked a couple switches, then found the alarm keypad by the back door. The old code still worked. I left the alarm in stay mode, armed and solid. In the hallway closet, I found the DVR setup, tucked neatly on a shelf. Black box with wires running out the back, lights blinking steady. Grandpa always trusted cameras more than locks. Only then did I pull out the sealed letter. Thick paper, folded once. I sat at the dining table and opened it. The handwriting was my grandfather's, blocky and direct. Nate, if you're reading this, then you know how things turned out. The box key holds what you need. Don't fight them on their terms. Trust Carlos. He'll know what to do. Grandpa. That was it. Short, practical, no extra words. I set the letter down, stared at it for a long minute. Then I walked upstairs to the guest room, dropped my duffel by the bed, and pulled my boots off. I left them right there, ready to slip back on. My phone stayed on the nightstand, volume maxed. I laid down on top of the covers, staring at the ceiling. My grandparents' house was supposed to feel like home. Tonight it felt like a fortress under siege. Abor up. I didn't sleep much that first night in the guest room. The rain tapping the windows was the only sound. By sunrise, I gave up on trying to rest and got moving. First thing, I walked the house. I did a quick sweep. Power, heat, doors, garage, then headed to the bank. I needed to see what that brass key opened, so I drove into town to the bank. The clerk checked my ID and the death certificates. My grandparents had added me as an authorized deputy, co-renter, with survivorship access on the signature card, so she walked me to a viewing room for box 217. The safe deposit box wasn't huge, but it was packed. Inside, 3 ledgers, thick with my grandfather's handwriting. Columns of dates, dollar amounts, notes about loans given, loans never repaid. A small stack of USB drives, labeled by year. Copies of older wills with revisions scratched out, showing how the estate planning changed over time. Photos of jewelry, watches, even electronics. Each photo had a date written on the back. The newest ones matched things I remembered seeing at the funeral, proof that items had gone missing. A single envelope marked Funeral Week. Inside were printed screenshots of security footage. Jason slipping a watch into his pocket. My mom walking out with a small jewelry box. Later, I'd learned Carlos had placed the envelope in box 217 the morning after the funeral, per Grandpa's standing instructions. He was already authorized on the box. I returned the empty box to the clerk and took the contents home in a banker's bag to scan and catalog. That evening, I scanned and time-stamped every page and file. Before closing, I drove back and returned the original ledgers, wills, photos, the funeral week envelope, and the USBs to box 217. I kept labeled copies at the house. When I pulled into the driveway, there was already someone waiting out front. A middle-aged guy in work boots, baseball cap in hand. He walked up as I got out. "Morning, Nate. I'm Carlos. Your grandparents had me watching the property, grounds, maintenance. They told me to look after things if anything ever happened." I shook his hand. He knew where everything was better than I did. "Did you put an envelope labeled Funeral Week in box 217? I asked. Carlos nodded. "Harold added me to the signature card years ago. If anything went missing, I was to pull the DVR clips, print stills, and drop them in the box. I did it Monday morning after the funeral." He walked me around, showed me the new cameras he'd installed last year at Grandpa's request, hidden better than the older system Grandpa had set up years ago. The shed out back was stocked with tools, all logged in an inventory notebook Grandma had written herself. Every hammer and garden spade had a note beside it. She didn't miss a thing. While we were in the kitchen going over the DVR login, a knock came at the back door. It was Dorothy, my grandparents' housekeeper. She'd been with them for 20 years, gray hair tied back, carrying a tote bag. "I heard what happened at the reading," she said, handing me a small bundle. Inside were spare keys for the house and a folder stuffed with papers. "These are Elizabeth's journals," Dorothy explained. "She documented every visit, every conversation with your father, your mother, Pam, Jason. Exact dates, exact words." I flipped through. One entry jumped out. Last year, my dad asked them for $250,000 for an investment opportunity. When they said no, he stormed out. Grandma wrote, "Richard accused us of favoring Nate. He couldn't be more wrong. Nate has never asked for anything. He only brings food and stays for dinner." I thanked Dorothy, promised I'd take care of the journals. She patted my arm. "Your grandparents trusted you for a reason." Then she left. I sat at the table and called Matthew, the lawyer. He answered on the second ring. I explained what I'd found, the ledgers, the USB drives, the journals. He told me exactly what to do. Scan and copy everything. Timestamp the files. Make 2 backups. He also had Carlos sign a short declaration when he pulled the footage and when he deposited the envelope, so our chain of custody was airtight. File a restricted property list with me, and I'll notify the probate court that certain assets are contested. That way, if your family tries to grab anything, we've already documented it. I wrote it all down step by step. No gaps. That afternoon, another visitor showed up. A woman in her 40s, sharp blazer, carried herself like she didn't waste time. She introduced herself as Rosa Martinez, the COO of Alexander Logistics. I worked alongside your grandparents for 15 years, she said. They told me about you. She didn't sugarcoat anything. Your father tried to angle into the company years ago. He doesn't understand operations. Your grandparents kept him out for good reason. The company's healthy, but you'll need to understand at least the basics to protect your stake. She gave me a quick crash course right there at the dining table. Route sheets, fuel logs, maintenance costs. She listed foremen by name. Miguel, Aaron, guys who had been loyal to my grandpa for decades. They respected him. They'll respect you if you show you care about the work. Before leaving, she offered to walk me through the yard later that week. The first real strike came 3 days later. I was in the kitchen scanning pages from my grandmother's journals when Matthew called. His voice was calm, but the words landed heavy. Your father filed for a temporary freeze on the estate accounts. Claims you're financially inexperienced and that dispersing assets would be irresponsible. I asked him how serious it was. It's a nuisance more than anything, Matthew said. His attorney is a golfing buddy who's trying to pull strings. I've already filed a response with the probate judge. You'll get a letter in the mail confirming the freeze is denied. But the point isn't winning. It's to rattle you. So they were moving fast. That same afternoon, I noticed something odd on the internet router in the hall closet. The activity light kept blinking even when my laptop was shut. I logged into the admin panel and saw a string of failed login attempts from an unknown IP. Jason. No one else in the family would even know where to start. I wasn't about to let him snoop. I changed the SSID, reset the passwords, and turned on 2-factor authentication with my phone. Then, I unplugged the DVR for a few minutes and copied the entire drive onto an encrypted SSD I picked up from the electronics store that morning. That copy went straight into my backpack. The next morning, I took the encrypted SSD to the bank and placed it in box 217 alongside the original ledgers and funeral week photos I'd returned the night before. If Jason wanted to hack, he'd have to do better than guessing my Wi-Fi. A local blogger put up a piece titled, "Can a small-town mechanic handle a multi-million-dollar inheritance?" The article didn't say Nate, but it didn't need to. The details were clear enough. 27-year-old grease monkey. Family worried about misuse. Sources say heir was always the least ambitious. It painted me like some dropout who stumbled into money he couldn't handle. The writing style screamed my mom. She'd fed that blogger the quotes and probably smiled the whole time doing it. I took screenshots and pulled the domain registration and analytics tags. The site used a public registrar shield, but the Google Analytics ID matched a PR firm run by my mom's friend. I also saved a cached copy showing an X served by header from the firm's CDN. If this turned legal, I had breadcrumbs. By the end of the week, they even tried to get physical. Carlos caught it first. A man in a polo shirt showed up at the front gate with a clipboard, said he was sent to appraise antiques for insurance. No appointment, no letterhead, no business card, just a name he mumbled too fast. I stepped outside, asked him who sent him. He dodged the question, said something about the family wanting a valuation. Which family member? I asked. He couldn't answer. I told him to leave. Before he pulled away, I wrote down the license plate number and handed it to Carlos. Log this. Time, date, description. Carlos nodded and tucked it into his pocket notebook without a word. They were testing the perimeter, seeing how easy it would be to slip someone in. That night, Rosa called and asked if I wanted to come down to the logistics yard. She said it was time I saw what I'd actually inherited. The yard was quiet when we arrived, floodlights buzzing overhead. Rows of trucks sat lined up, each one numbered with peeling stencils. Rosa led me to the office where the foreman, a thick-built guy in his 50s named Miguel, was finishing paperwork. He looked up, squinted, then grinned. Haven't seen you since you were running around here with a wrench too big for your hands. You're Harold's grandson, all right. We shook hands. His palm was calloused like sandpaper. Rosa laid out the basics on a desk covered in fuel receipts. Here's what matters. Every truck has a route sheet, fuel logs tied to those routes. Maintenance ledgers show how often each rig's been serviced. If these three things line up, the company makes money. If someone skips, cheats, or pockets, it bleeds cash. She slid a folder across to me. Inside were sheets full of mileages, gallons pumped, service intervals. Your grandfather checked these by hand every week. Not because he didn't trust us, but because he believed accountability kept everyone sharp. Miguel chimed in. Company's been solid, but your dad tried to get in here 5 years back. Wanted to slash maintenance to cut costs. Your grandpa told him to get lost. Hearing that didn't surprise me. My dad's style has always been about squeezing until something breaks. By the time I finished, the place looked less like a home and more like a workshop of evidence. But that's what it needed to be. They were circling from every direction. Legal, digital, social, physical. My job was to keep the walls solid and the records airtight. By the start of the next week, I knew they weren't backing off. Every day brought another attempt. If I didn't draw a line, they'd keep circling until something cracked. Matthew came over on Tuesday evening with his leather briefcase. He set it down on the dining table, right next to the stacks of ledgers and photos I'd already spread out. We're not waiting for them to decide the pace, he said. We'll control it. He pulled out a pile of drafts. Cease and desist letters, each one printed with their names across the top. My dad, my mom, Jason, Aunt Pam, Uncle Steve. The letters spelled it out. No more harassment, no more threats, no more spreading lies. Then came the trespass notices, listing every item that belonged to the estate. If they stepped onto the property or tried to touch anything, it would be treated as theft. He wasn't done. Jason's attempted hacking alone is enough to justify a restraining order, Matthew explained. He laid a packet of paperwork on the table, already half completed. We don't have to file it today, but it's ready. The moment he pushes again, we serve it. It felt heavy in my hands. Not because of the weight of the paper, but because it was real leverage. I started making calls. Judge Henderson answered his landline like he'd been waiting. He'd been friends with my grandparents for decades. I'll be there, he said. Simple as that. No hesitation. Police Chief Williams met me at her office. She made it clear she couldn't act officially unless laws were broken, but she'd stand in as a friend of the family. Sometimes presence is enough, she told me. Rosa didn't even blink when I asked. She said she'd bring her laptop, ready to pull up company records if needed. Your father doesn't want people remembering his debts, she added. Miguel, the foreman from the logistics yard, agreed to come too. I worked for Harold 30 years, he said. If anyone questions who kept this company standing, I'll tell them straight. And of course, Carlos and Dorothy, they didn't need asking. They were already part of it. Dorothy had even started combing through journals, marking pages with sticky notes. She handed me 3 of them one night. These will matter, she said. Each one documented an ugly ask from my dad or Jason, complete with dates and details. By Thursday, I knew who would stand with me. The next step was showing them what I had. I set up an old projector in the living room. White sheet pinned against the wall, HDMI cable snaked across the rug. I loaded a clip reel onto a flash drive. First up, security footage from the week of the funeral. Jason sliding a watch into his pocket. My mom tucking a jewelry box under her jacket. Both clips had timestamps burned into the corner. Next, I added footage from the door cam, showing that fake appraiser at the gate, clipboard in hand, trying to talk his way inside. His license plate number flashed across the screen after the clip ended. Next, I screen captured the smear piece and the Hoys/registrar record, the matching analytics ID, and an archived header from the PR firm's CDN, all tying the site to my mom's friend's shop. That night, Matthew drafted the message we'd send. Short and sharp. If you want to discuss items and the will, come Saturday at 10 a.m. to the Alexander residence. Discussion will be documented, no exceptions. He sent it from his office email so there'd be a paper trail. Friday, I spread out the binders I'd been organizing all week. Each binder had a cover sheet with a numbered index. If I needed to open one, I could flip straight to the page. Tomorrow, they'd come expecting to steamroll me like they always had. Instead, they'd walk into a room stacked with witnesses, documents, and proof. They showed up 20 minutes early. 4 cars in the driveway at once. My dad's black sedan first, then my mom's SUV, Pam and Steve's convertible, and Jason's beat-up sports car. This time, they didn't come alone. Their lawyer climbed out of the sedan, and 2 private security guards followed, broad-shouldered, standing close. The lawyer said they were there to keep the peace. Carlos opened the front door before they could start pounding. Miss Elizabeth, he started to say out of habit, then caught himself. Mr. Nate is expecting you. Come in. They filed inside, faces already set like they were walking into a courtroom. My father stepped in first, scanning the living room. His expression changed when he saw who was waiting. At the center of the room was the projector screen. On the couches and chairs around it sat Judge Henderson, calm in a dark jacket, and Chief Williams, her badge visible but her arms folded. Matthew stood near the table stacked with binders. On the far side, Rosa, Miguel, Carlos, and Dorothy. It wasn't just me anymore. My mother's voice cut through the silence. What is this? Why are outsiders here? This is a private family matter. Sit, I said. I pointed at the chairs lined up. They didn't like it, but they sat. Their lawyer stood behind them. The two guards stayed near the doorway, shifting uncomfortably when Chief Williams' eyes landed on them. My dad tried to take control. This is unnecessary. We're here to settle things properly. Nate isn't capable of handling this estate, and we all know it. The will is a mistake. Judge Henderson spoke before I could. The will is clear and legally sound. I've looked it over as a family friend, not in any official capacity. There is no mistake. My dad's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. I picked up the remote and started the projector. The first clip played, Jason slipping a watch into his pocket during the funeral. Timestamp in the corner. Then my mom carrying out a jewelry box, glancing over her shoulder. The room went quiet except for the sound of the footage. I hit pause. Those items are listed as estate property, taken without permission. My mother opened her mouth, but Chief Williams spoke instead. That's theft, and if it happens again, I'll have to act officially. Next clip, the fake appraiser at the gate, license plate clear on the screen. Sent by someone here, I said. No one answered. I switched to the documents on the screen. Scans from Grandma's journals. Her handwriting filled the page. Richard demanded $250,000 for a scheme, became hostile when refused. Jason asked for $100,000 for his project, left angry when denied. Dates matched to the photos. Matthew slid binder 2 across the table toward their lawyer. Tabs marked each entry. Then Rosa stepped forward with her laptop. Company records. Here's the unpaid loan. $200,000 taken by Richard in 2012. Never repaid. She laid down the ledger. Your parents chose not to pursue it, but it's documented. My dad shifted in his chair, face red. I clicked again. Screenshots of the smear blog article filled the screen. Highlighted text glowing yellow. Next to it, the WHUI's/registrar record, the matching analytics ID, and an archived header from the PR firm's CDN, tying the site to my mom's friend's shop. Matthew handed over printed packets. All of this will be part of the record if there's any attempt to contest the will. Chief Williams leaned forward. And for the record, this property is under surveillance inside and out. Any attempt to enter without permission will be treated as trespass and theft. There won't be warnings. The room went still. Judge Henderson cleared his throat. Your parents documented every choice carefully. This isn't going to be overturned. My advice is simple. Respect their wishes and move on. Matthew placed the cease and desist letters on the coffee table, one for each of them. You're being served. All further communication goes through me. No direct threats, no more articles, no visits. If there's contact outside legal channels, we escalate. Pam snapped first. She stood, muttering, "This is ridiculous. We're leaving." Uncle Steve rose with her, hand on her arm, eyes down. They walked out without another word. Jason slammed his laptop shut. "This is all fake. You think you can frame me?" He half stood, but one of their security guards, acting under the lawyer's keep it calm instructions, set a hand on Jason's shoulder and eased him back into his seat. My dad stayed seated. He stared at the packets, flipping a page with a stiff hand. He didn't argue anymore. He didn't have to. The silence said enough. After a long minute, he stood. "This isn't finished," he muttered. "Yeah," I said. "It is." They filed out, lawyer in tow. The door shut behind them. The room let out a collective breath. Dorothy started pouring coffee from the kitchen, like it was just another Sunday dinner. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. For the first time, I wasn't reacting to them. I'd set the terms. When the last car left the driveway, the house went silent. No shouting, no threats, no fake smiles, just quiet. Everyone around me relaxed a little, but I didn't. I wasn't celebrating. I was just tired. The kind of tired that sinks into your bones. Matthew stayed after the others left. We sat at the dining table while Dorothy cleared the coffee cups. He stacked the binders, clipped them shut, and said, "We'll file everything tomorrow. Court will have a complete record. From here on, all communication goes through me." I nodded. That was fine with me. I didn't want another text from Jason or a fake friendly call from my mom. Let them bark at Matthew's voicemail instead. Over the next week, a few packages arrived at the house. Small boxes with watches, jewelry, and electronics wrapped in tissue. Items that had been taken during the funeral. No apology notes, no signatures, just returns. I logged each piece with Carlos, marked the date, and put them in the safe. They were just objects, but writing them down felt like closing a door. The next step wasn't about things. It was about building. I took $500,000 from the estate funds and set up the Alexander Vocational Fund. Matthew drafted the paperwork. Rosa helped connect me with a local nonprofit that handled scholarships. The idea was simple: tools, training, and certifications for people who wanted to work but couldn't afford the entry costs. 450 classes for drivers, trade school tuition, even welding gear or mechanic toolkits for apprentices. That's the kind of stuff my grandparents would have understood. Practical, not flashy. I didn't quit my job at the shop. I cut my hours back, but I kept working 3 days a week. Turning wrenches kept me grounded. The other days I spent with Rosa at the logistics office. She put me to work on 2 projects. First was tightening the maintenance schedule. We built a color-coded chart that showed which trucks were due for service, so nothing slipped through. Second was a route planner pilot. Rosa had numbers showing fuel costs eating into margins. With a little software and some common sense, we started testing shorter runs and fewer empty returns. Miguel backed it all up. "Your grandpa would like this," he told me, flipping through the charts. Simple changes that keep trucks running and drivers paid. Hearing that meant more than any balance sheet. Life settled into a rhythm. Sundays became dinner nights at the house. It wasn't fancy. Roast chicken, potatoes, sometimes a pot of chili. Around the table were Carlos and his wife Dorothy, Rosa with her teenage son, Matthew, Miguel, and a couple drivers who'd been with the company since the early years. People laughed, swapped stories, passed dishes. It felt like a real family. Not the one I was born into, but the one my grandparents had chosen for themselves. They all pitched in without asking. Carlos kept the property in shape. Dorothy still came by 3 mornings a week to keep the house steady. Rosa checked on the business side, and Matthew made sure the paperwork never fell behind. None of them were there for money. They were there because of respect for my grandparents, and little by little, because of respect for me too. One crisp morning in October, I drove out to the cemetery. I wore my work jeans and an old jacket, boots still dusty from the yard. I carried fresh flowers and set them down by the headstone. The grass was damp, and the air had that sharp smell of leaves turning. I didn't make a speech, just said it plain. I'm keeping it together. The fund's running. Rosa's got the company steady. People are looked after. You'd approve. I stood there a while longer, hands in my pockets, then turned back toward the truck. On the way home, I swung by the yard. Miguel flagged me down, said one of the rigs had a rattle in the steering column. I climbed up, listened, tightened a couple bolts, wiped my hands on a rag. It wasn't a big fix, but it mattered. Drivers need trucks running clean to keep food on their own tables. When I pulled into my grandparents' driveway later, the house didn't feel like a fortress anymore. It felt like what it always was supposed to be, a base. Not for hiding, but for moving forward. No drama, no shouting, just steady work, one piece at a time. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.